I'm dead pallid, I have a gruff beard, and right now I'm wearing a shirt that's very lumberjacky, and that put me in the mood to read Whimsywood. Whimsywood is a story by Slimebeast, who is a friend of mine, and it's a story I really like. I just felt, hey, why don't I make this video reading it and reacting to it and explaining why it is that I like it. Right here is the story, and so I'm just going to live read it and react to it as I go. I always hated road trips. Can't relate. I loved, it was always relaxing for me as a child to go on road trips. I still love doing it. I'm not using the term hate lightly. I've always absolutely hated long car rides, especially as a child. The hours on end spent cramped in the back of a vehicle drove me to the brink of adolescent madness. The sound of the road always seemed always just loud enough to make it impossible to carry on a conversation with my parents up front. That's how desperate I'd get for any kind of break from the monotony. I'd actually wish I could hear my parents. So I like that we're starting out talking about our narrator having a lack of agency, feeling that they don't have any power in that situation. And so we have a clear motivation as to why they don't like the car rides. And I think that lack of agency really continues throughout the story, as you'll see, hopefully, or maybe you'll disagree. Sometimes my mom would try to make the trips a little less unbearable for both of us. She'd buy a stack of comic books or a couple new action figures and hide them until the dreaded day would arrive. Naturally, I knew about them and would usually end up looking at them beforehand, completely sabotaging the attempt. I guess I've just always hated waiting, really. Okay, so, getting a real sense of who our narrator is, that they're an impatient person. And also, seeing that this has been a frustrating thing for the parents too. He's self-aware that, no, I understand that I'm being a bastard child and annoying my parents. Not many, well, I guess he has the self-awareness now in retrospect, but not many kids have that self-awareness. I'm going to tell you about one of these trips. The most mind-numbingly boring trip yet. From my home in New York to my grandparents' house in Arizona. Alright, yes, we drove to Arizona, and I'd already read all the comics days earlier. We stopped at a couple hotels for the night along the way, and I got to stretch my legs in school playgrounds if we happened to pass one when it was closed. But the majority of the time, for days straight, was spent seated upright, seatbelt on, and enveloped in the unforgiving drone of tires on pavement. Alright, yeah, you just feel like you're a prisoner in that situation. Now, I always loved road trips, but they were different for me because, I had a Game Boy, playing my Pokemons. I guess our narrator, Slimebeast, is a little older than me, and so he didn't have the luxury of being able to play a Pokemon. It's kind of like, I call it electronic pacifier. You give the kids the electronics, and they shut up. It's quite. That's why so many kids are addicted to those weird YouTube videos. is because of that. I don't even know what state we were in when I saw the first billboard. It was weather-worn, paint peeling, almost covered by overgrown trees. Something largely unremarkable, except for the image it offered. Whimsywood was written in multicolored, balloon-like letters and set above the upturned head of a unicorn. Okay, so it's not too dramatic, but we have a shorter paragraph where there have been bigger paragraphs, and that will always put more weight onto those, into the words, into the meaning of the smaller paragraph. And that's why it's kind of important to pace out your paragraphs in that way. It's not too dramatic here, but we do get this moment of, I don't even know what state we were in when I saw the first billboard. So one, we're saying that the narrator has a fuzzy memory, and so we can't ask them for too many details of, like, okay, what state was this in? We just know roughly that it was along the lines from where they were going to Arizona, New York to Arizona. That's most of America. That's a big swath of America. And we're also told that it's kind of revealed in this semi-dramatic way, but it's still believable. It's the moment of the line that I love from Mr. Widemouth of, I don't exactly recall when I met Mr. Widemouth. It's the same moment in this story of, I don't know what state we were in when I saw the first billboard. And also the billboard itself being, overgrown and not kept up. I've been watching a lot of fucking Defunctland. Oh man, I love Defunctland. And there's been, I think we all have an idea of what it looks like when an amusement park gets abandoned, but also just run down. And we're getting an idea before we even see the place that it's run down and that it's dated. Because it has balloon-like letters, which, like, really, that's not too appealing to kids. Just, like, balloon letters, come on. Like, you gotta be, like, explosive, Marvel, superhero, that kind of thing. But we're not getting that. We're getting the very dated balloon-like, this is what an adult thinks kids like. So I like that. As we went past the sign, I could barely catch the small text below the mythical creature's image. Games, rides, animals, family fun. That's how you know it's not going to be great when it says family fun. 25 miles ahead. Mom! I shouted as loud as I could, overtaking the tire's drone by several decibels. Mom! There's a park. She had seen it. They both had. My father, driving, took his eyes off the road for a split second as the two exchanged an unsure glance. It was a look of understood. It was a look I understood despite having never seen it before. They didn't want to stop there. Mom? I must have sounded incredibly pathetic, even though I wasn't trying. Because she turned back with a smile. Okay, she said, if it's open, and we'll see how much it costs to get in. Coffee. So, all of this real life, like everyone of every socioeconomic status has experienced this. That was all I needed to hear. Now I was bouncing in my seat, utterly enthused. I just felt renewed, sharpened, and more alert after the stagnation of endless highway. That will wear on a child, especially if all they have to do is look at the road. And listen to their parents' taste in music. Unless you like your parents' taste in music. I like some of it. I watched the occasional car pass by and looked into their windows whenever possible. I looked for another kid like me, maybe coming back from the park. If I saw one kid with a Whimsywood pennant, or an oversized stuffed animal, or even just a simple smile on their face, I would just know the park was open. Every car that we passed was empty, though. Well, except for the grown-ups. But who cares about them? So, I think that there's a desire to, what's the term I'm looking for? There is a prejudice against writers who use capitalization for emphasis. That's not proper. The way that you should do it, if you're going to do it at all, and you shouldn't even do this, is to use italics. But we live in the internet age, and that this is a story that is published in the internet age for the internet age, where we're getting, even a kid with a simple smile on their face. I would just know that the park was open. And the whole thing about adults, who cared about them being capitalized, these words being capitalized. It's conversational in a way that italics aren't. Italics are kind of like formal, and using capitalization in very sparse moments to do this feels conversational. So I would encourage people to think about how they can incorporate just a little bit of that, but like, it's a dab will do you. You don't need too much of it. And if you do use it too much, then it loses its impact. And I know that that's just like a small thing, but it goes so far in helping it feel like this narrator is talking to you, the person who's, the character is talking to you. I tried to convince myself that the random sites on the side of the road were signs that the park was indeed open. A soiled baby doll with a hole in its face, a colorful blanket fluttering in the branches of a dead tree, even a sock monkey reclining on the road's center divider line. These were enough. There were enough children passing through to leave those signals, so I was more and more convinced that this was going to be awesome. The second billboard whizzed past, the same Whimsywood logo, the same unicorn head, the same state of disrepair. Hanging off the billboard was a small wooden sign painted in red letters. Open. Mom! Dad! I know. I saw it. My dad turned to my mom again with a chuckle. Well, I guess we're going. Okay, so, rule of threes. You always want to give people 3 of anything to get them to remember something. And one thing that I like to see in creepypastas is the shotgun of 3 creepy images in rapid succession that aren't necessarily creepy. That are only contextually creepy, or maybe they're creepy after the fact. Maybe they're just slightly off-putting, but maybe even have something positive associated with them, as we have in this case. So we have the soiled baby doll with a hole in its face. That's creepy, but it means that there was a baby doll. They got the baby doll from somewhere, and presumably, prizes at this kind of like, fair, like, not fair, but like amusement park. That's the term I'm looking for. And then the same thing with the colorful blanket fluttering in the wind. That's kind of like a beautiful poetic image. And then you put that right with the sock monkey, which is kind of, they're always creepy to me. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. I don't like sock monkeys. So those 3 images are somewhat different images, but they're really there to pull you into the story. This is really setting the scene. We're really getting the details, getting the Fleming effect, if you will. And so we're pulled into this. I'm really a fan of this. So let's resume where we were. I guess we're going. The final Whimsywood sign stood at the end of a gravel driveway that trailed a long way off behind the tree line. The sign was much like the billboards, but despite being in better repair, it actually seemed even older. The letters, am I getting text? The letters seemed even older. Despite being in better repair, it actually seemed older. The lettering was hand-painted in an old-timey style, and the text beneath the unicorn head differed slightly. Games of chance, mechanical rides, rare animals, wholesome fun for Junior and Sis. I couldn't help myself to whip out a little southern accent. I wanted this to be like one cut, but I had to take a phone call. I'm a very important person, okay? I'm very in demand. Dad didn't really like the idea of traveling the gravel stretch. He grumbled and complained the whole way down as the tires crunched stones and kicked things up into the undercarriage. I heard a few curse words in there, but all I cared about was the fast approaching fun. I think a lot of kids have had this, like, hopefully you grow out of this at some point. But maybe you have memories like this, where your parents are super pissed about something, but you're having a great time, so you don't give a shit. Like, you're just like, I don't care. And then I also like that our narrator's family lives in New York, and so, they're not used to driving on a gravel driveway, which is pretty, if you grow up in the country, it's a gravel driveway. It's like whatever. And so the dad's grumbling about it, getting his nice car, get rocks kicked up into the undercarriage. He's mad about it. I like that. Past the trees, the Whimsywood Park sign was spectacular on the drive-in. We were overlooking the entirety of the property, several cleared acres with a short, long building essentially acting as a gateway between the downward sloping driveway and the gaming booths, petting zoos, and carnival rides towards the back. Alright. So this is a very rural amusement park. A lot of people, when they think of amusement parks, they think of Disney. They think of, Kings Island if you're from Ohio, just places where there's, a bunch of amusement park rides that are like giant roller coasters and that kind of thing. But this is the kind of stuff where it's a more rural thing. You don't necessarily know about all of these things. They're not cataloged. That's the word I'm looking for. Oh my god. In the same obsessive detail that there are for all of these other bigger amusement parks. This is just like a few gaming booths, petting zoo, and carny rides. They're rides, but they're not giant ones, I was probably vibrating at a dangerous frequency at this point, like I was on the world's biggest sugar rush. Wow, Mom remarked. Wow, it's actually pretty nice. The mom's Owen Wilson now. Dad started the car down the slope toward the parking lot with a deep sigh. The parking lot was about half filled with cars, which was probably a bit surprising to my parents. The minivans and station wagons scattered throughout the gravel expanse proved that, yes, Whimsywood was open. And we can also talk about the drive-in. You get to oversee Whimsywood itself and see everything, which is kind of like, that's a really neat thing. Like, you get to see what the entire park looks like before you go in. That's a pretty nice deal. And it also sets the scene that this is cleared out acres of amusement park, but it's surrounded by trees, and that comes in later. Mega sugar rush. Wow. Mom started down the parking lot was half filled with cars. I didn't think of it. I didn't think of anything of it though. Racing to the front door of the building to see if they were locked. Hey, Dad called out as I bolted forward. I froze in place, thought about what I must have done wrong, and sheepishly made my way back to his side. Together, the three of us approached the building. More waiting. So more lines. Dad pulled the door open and held it for Mom and I. Me first, of course. There was a wooden box by the front door that simply read, "Pay what you can. $5 for everyone over 3 suggested." I thought I saw Dad slip a $10 bill and thought about protesting my age, but I was too excited to get inside. So that is a very cheap price for, an amusement park. $5 to get into an amusement park? The interior of the building was dark, lit by row upon row of arcade game cabinets, and neon signs that hung on the walls. The signs weren't for any specific product, but were more along the lines of general concepts. Fun, groovy, tubular, stuff like that. One that sticks out in my mind just confusingly read, superpower. Oh my god. Skip 20 minutes ahead in this video if you don't want me to spurge about this moment. I like that this just doesn't make any sense. Because I maybe I'm resonating with this on a deep level, but I vaguely remember something along the lines when I went to an arcade center where there was a play place and stuff like that. I vaguely remember at an arcade there was something on the wall that said something like that, or it was stuff like, fun times and, tubular and that kind of stuff, rad. And then there was one that just said something that was off, and maybe it was just some executive who had no idea what he was doing, just maybe superpower, kids like superheroes. Or maybe there was something under that at some point that make more sense. But regardless of any of that, I just like that this moment is just sticking out in the narrator's mind, and that's why I like this moment. So including some sort of like realistic detail like that, I think goes a long way. I hadn't really been to an arcade yet at the time, so this had my jaw dragging on the floor. Now that we were indoors and there was no chance of getting backed over by a van, I was free to run around like a lunatic. I was quickly lost amid the beeps and shrieks and computerized music of about 100 video games. I checked all of them out. A centipede like game called Skull and Crossbow caught my attention the most. It had a little boy with a crossbow at the bottom of the screen, firing upwards as skeletons and skulls rolled across a graveyard, inching closer and closer to him. Excuse me. I ran back to my parents, and my mom already had a handful of quarters prepared for me. I played it for a while, but I couldn't get very far without dying, so the fun was over pretty quick. When I returned to my parents this time, they were talking with a third adult. She was a squat, heavy-set woman with stringy black hair and a nasty, neat black dress clothes. She wore a unicorn on her forehead, attached with an elastic band. Okay, so what we have here, I think we can all kind of picture what that looks like. Like, this is the uniform that they wear at work, and it looks all nice and professional, but it's like super old, and she doesn't wash it enough. I like that. Well, Dad said to the round lady, "Here's the boy." The way he said it was the same as saying, here's my way out of this conversation. The round lady turned and leaned down to face level with me. Her face was wrinkled, worn, and old like the sign. She said hello to me with a large yellowish smile, and her breath smelled like urine. I think that we can all relate to like an adult getting, not in a way of, what's the term, not in some like invasive way, but like an adult getting too close to us, and you're just having this moment of like, I thought like when you got into adulthood you knew to brush your teeth. Just little things like that make me love this story. I didn't answer her. Instead, cleaving to Mom's leg. Cleaving to Mom's leg. Slimebeast says like weird bits of language here and there like that. Like, I understand what he means, and I don't think he means clinging. I think he means cleaving. But okay. "He's shy," she explained. "It was nice talking to you." We quickly exited and walked to the large clearing behind the building. So the dad is using the child as an excuse to get out of the conversation, and then the mom uses the child being shy to get out of any of them having to talk to this urine-breathed woman. And I also like that she's described as old like the sign. So like she is, it's kind of like she's attached to the Whimsywood itself. Like she is a part of the amusement park, and she is just as old as it. We quickly exited and walked towards a large clearing behind the building. "Who was that?" I finally asked when we were out of earshot. "She works here," Dad said flatly. He paused and added, couldn't get a word in edgewise. We took a few steps before Mom and Dad exchanged the agitated look once again. For about 15 minutes, I ran from one attraction to the next as Dad repeatedly checked his watch. I didn't care. This was my one chance to actually enjoy myself. I wanted to take Dad's watch and smash it. I wanted to stay here, not go to stupid Arizona. Yeah, that's the twist, is that this creepypasta continues on into the other creepypasta, Arizona. The petting zoo had the usual fare: goats, chickens, and a hell of a lot of fleas. The old man sat on An old man sat on a hay bale in the center of the petting zoo as other kids around my age harassed the birds and acted wary of the goats. The old man was dressed a lot like the round woman, right down to the plastic unicorn horn on his head. He smiled at me. After I did the customary amount of petting and stepping and shit, the old man beckoned me over. I kept a safe distance from him, but I did approach. As I stood a couple feet from the old man, he cast his gaze down at the straw beneath his feet. I did the same. Then he swept a bit of straw aside. Just beneath was one of the chickens. It was motionless. Its head twisted several times around. Jostled by the old man kicking the straw, a few maggots twisted and turned out of the creature's beak. I locked eyes with the old man, who was still smiling. "Don't tell the other kids," he whispered. "They'll all want to see it." He put his finger to his leathery, black speckled lips as if to shush me. I always loved animals, and even if I hadn't, this would have still been disturbing. I ran back to my mom with such an awkward gait that she instinctively knew to kneel down and catch me as I reached her. Okay. I just wanted to read that moment in its entirety and not break it up with, commentary. I really like that this is something that could really happen. You could really meet some weirdo who really would say stuff like that to a kid, who would give that kid nightmares for the rest of his life. It's not so outlandish. It's not going to the obvious, cheap things, which are always, rape or non-consensual things and murder. Those are always the go-to, right? And then you combine them together for the extra scare. This is a lot simpler than that. This is all it takes to give someone nightmares, is a dead chicken. I eat dead chicken all the time. I love it. Love dead chickens. They're great. But in this context, it's really disturbing. And so sometimes that's the takeaway from this. Sometimes all you need is a dead chicken to freak someone out. And if you've ever seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you'll learn that as well. Okay. Reached her. "What?" she asked. "What is it?" "There's a dead chicken." "Oh, it was under the straw by that man." "Well, I'm sure he'll get rid of it. Sometimes animals get old and they pass on. Remember, we talked about this." So, the mom just straight up doesn't listen to what the child is saying. And isn't making an attempt to have empathy with the child, of just like, "Oh my God, I thought we talked about this. I thought we were more mature than this. I thought we knew that death is a thing." Of course the child knows that death is a thing. That's a disturbing thing to show an adult, a dead chicken at a petting zoo. This is furthering the helplessness. He's waiting in the car, helpless. Waiting in the line, helpless. Inside the arcade, he's having a good time, and then it's punctuated by, "Oh man, I gotta talk to this creepy lady with urine breath." And now we're in the petting zoo, and he's kind of like not really having a good time because it's a petting zoo. And then there's this creepy old man, and then the mom isn't listening. Like, he keeps not having any choices to make. And it's very easy to feel that way when you're a child. Sometimes easy to feel that way when you're an adult. Get trapped in a rut. Anyway, pontificating too much. As you no doubt already know, that wasn't the problem that I was having with the whole situation. Still, I didn't really have the mental tools to figure out exactly how to clarify the situation. So there you have that. I held my hands with my mom and dad, almost hanging between them as I decided what I wanted to see next in the park. That's when an announcement echoed through the park, carried by rattling, tiny loudspeakers mounted on telephone poles. Welcome, Whimsywood wee ones. Hurry. I'm doing Mad Pat. Hurry. To Lumberjack Timber Tunnel. All you little lumberjacks and lumberjills toddle over to a tunnel to get ready to laugh. I'm doing Matt Pat as a yokel, I guess, is what I'm doing. The announcer did the best passable goofy impression mixed with a hype style of an ad for a monster truck rally. That's very specific. How about that, Mom asked. You want to do that? I felt a little less sick now, almost entirely forgetting anything was wrong in the first place. Sure, I perked up. I don't think that's how a kid was. Sure. The Timber Tunnel was like any given theme park's tunnel ride. A metal track or roller coaster style cart in a long tunnel the tracks led to. The mount of the tunnel bore flat plywood trees and a stand-up cutout of a burly lumberjack that looked like it had been left out in the rain for about a century. It was faded and worn, most of its facial features missing aside from a thick beard. I got into the cart at about the back. Other kids were already piling in, and there was a real sense that I might get shoved or kicked if I tried to work my way in any sooner than I did. So again, this just small things to further the theme of this child has no agency. This child feels helpless, and sometimes you don't need anything more than that, because if you're picking up small things here and there that are just furthering that theme of, feeling helpless, feeling that there's nothing you can do, and then you can do the same thing with other subjects. I'm trying to think of like a concrete example. If you have like nostalgic stories where you're banking off nostalgia, like little things that hit at the fears of losing your memories, that these precious times are over and you're never going to get them back. A bunch of little things to do that will go a long way. So just think about what your theme for a story is and really find a bunch of little things to further the horror of that and explore it. Might get shoved, blah, blah, blah. A round woman was standing by the cart, making sure everyone was safe and secure by manhandling them to see if they'd come loose from the cart. Nearby, two people in less than convincing two-man unicorn costume pranced and trotted around, the leading man making whinnying and snorting noises. Next to me in the cart was a dweeby kid with Coke bottle glass. Oh my god, it's the kid in the yellow sweater from Polar Express. A kid in Coke bottle glasses and a green and white striped shirt. He had a blob of snot running down his upper lip, which he would continually snort back up as he looked around in wonder. I'm getting little nosy doos myself. If this kid smiled any wider, his head would have fallen off. When the round woman finally worked her way to the back of the cart, she jerked and jostled me roughly, her hands darting from my arms to my chest to my legs, and bumping my crotch in a way that gave me a fleeting feeling of extreme unease. It happened so quickly that she was already moving on before I could even croak out a word. This is not necessarily anything, but it could be something. This could be some sort of molestation situation. I really don't like that ended up rhyming. Or it could just be, simple. She really is trying to make sure that every kid is safe. Regardless, he can't even get words out. That's how little agency this character has. Again, everything is just furthering the whole agency thing. And along with that, the cart was off. And with that, the cart was off. All the kids waved to their parents, who waved back again. My hands were solidly on the metal bar that held kids in place as I stared towards my parents, still dumbfounded by what just happened. Mom and Dad waved, their looks of happiness turning to concern over my appearance, just as I disappeared into the tunnel. Okay. He's so perturbed that he doesn't even want to take his little kid hands off the steel bar. That's how helpless he's feeling. And it's to the point where now even his parents are taking note. But it's too late because he's into the tunnel. I'm sure nothing bad is going to happen in the tunnel. After all of this happened, I just wanted to forget the song. All I wanted to do was forget the song. Lumberjack Dan, clearing all the trees, working on the land. Lumberjack Dan, working a hard day's work for the lumberjack man. It issued from unseen speakers over and over with no variation. It was set too loud, and a couple of kids ahead of me clasped their hands over their ears. Most just laughed, and one said, It's not bad, you guys are gay. We're all gay now. You guys are gay. There you go. I know that Slimebeast is older than me, but man, gay in the 90s was like the ultimate insult. Like, none of us cared about people actually having sex with other men. Men having sex with men. It was just such a fun word. It was the ultimate insult to youth. So that's just echoing over and over again. We passed painted scenes of forest landscapes and little animatronic lumberjacks. They had about the same range of animation as a desktop drinking bird toy, and they were about the same size. It was like they were being on a train in a miniature train set. So very underwhelming animatronics, and this is kind of like different than a lot of animatronics that you see in horror. If any of you have ever watched the Goofy movie, in the Goofy movie they go to a animatronic stage and it's like just terrible and it's like really cringy, but like there's a range of animation to them and they're all kind of like moving their instruments and this kind of thing. Same thing with like Five Nights at Freddy's and that kind of stuff. But here it's just like one movement back and forth like a drinking bird. I think that's a very nice visual. So it seems like they didn't get some sort of like professional animatronic person because it's just like this little range of animation. And then the same thing with their music. It's the same loop over and over again. That's all they could think of. There's my dog barking very loudly. Yep, Cassie. Hey, how's that going? Anyway, where were we? As we rounded the curve, the song looped. Loop sped up like a cassette tape was being played in fast forward. Lumberjack Dan. So, just all blurs together. The screeching, high-pitched voice was ear-splitting. Now all the kids were covering their ears. So it was disturbing some kids before. Now it's like, it's amped up, right? We're just upping the ante a little bit. I looked at the little mechanical people as we continued through the ride. They were moving faster, as well, blindingly fast, faster than any tiny tin toy should realistically be able to move without flying free from their hinges. As we continued, the lumberjacks were cutting other things. Farm animals. People. Again, we've, had normal-sized paragraphs here, and now we're just cut down to paragraph break. Farm animals. Paragraph break. People. That's, we're up in the ante from it's really annoying to hear to it's moving too fast and it feels dangerous. It doesn't feel like it should be moving this fast to it's showing disturbing imagery. And I think that where it goes from here still maintains a level of realism. Tiny lumberjacks had moved into the small settlements of log cabins and were relentlessly, eternally hacking away at tiny felt people. Blood spurts made of red wire jiggled this way and that as the tortuous murders commenced. The lights went out. The song still played, still way too fast and too loud. I felt my pants wetting. I don't know that we needed the pants wetting, honestly. That's just my opinion. The cart shook. It shook with increasing severity, like someone jostled from the car, then the middle, working their way back. Suddenly, something hit me like in the jaw very hard, like an uppercut. It felt like something lashed my face as well. It was like being hit from underneath by a child's shoe, foot and all, with the laces following suit. It was almost like someone had flown past me while kicking out violently. Okay, so that's, a weird image, like not a weird image, but a weird thing to describe the sensation of that you're having, and this character is suffering that in the dark. All of this is building up, and I think that this isn't perfectly realistic, but here's the thing. There are different times that people lived in when this becomes more normal. So I was just today, for instance, looking at someone posted on Facebook old Jim Henson commercials that he made for I forget what it was. Wilkinson's Coffee? Wilkinson's Coffee? Well, I'm gonna check this. Yeah, it's Wilkins Coffee. And it's literally Kermit the Frog just shooting a dude. Just shooting a dude for not liking his coffee on TV commercials. Can you imagine that in this day and age? So, like, when you factor that in, like, it's perfectly possible that something like this would happen. It makes more sense, at least. So, we are possibly getting kicked by a child who's flown from his seat back to him, and he's like kicking him on the way, and his shoelaces smacking him. Reeling back from the shocking blow, I slipped underneath the safety bar and crumpled to the floor of the cart. I cried out, but the music drowned the sound. I fell across the floor for help. From the boy next to me, but only found an empty space from wall to wall within the cart. Agency. Over and over and over again, they're talking about it. His sight is being ripped away by the lights going out, but even more, now he doesn't even know, he's, crying out, top of his lungs, yelling, and no one can hear him. In space, no one can hear you scream. In Lumberjack Dan's, magical tunnel ride, nobody can hear you scream over the incessant volume of this song playing on loop. He's feeling for even just another human being who was there. Now he's not there. The music finally ceased and everything was deadly quiet. Shriveling in the dark, I remained quiet. I didn't even breathe deeply. I listened for any sign. Can't even breathe. I listened for any signs of where everyone had gone or why they had left. All I heard was the sounds like a restaurant full of customers obnoxiously slurping soup mixed with the absent, brainless chewing of a group of cattle. It wasn't loud, but in the darkness, it seemed to echo to me. I really like how just through, having the vision taken away and only being able to use sound, you can use just the sound to change the scenery entirely, you know what I mean? I really like that. In the light never came back on, but thankfully the cart had continued to move throughout this ordeal. Soon I saw daylight as I emerged from the other end of the tunnel, still hunched down on the floor, and clutching my swollen jaw. When I realized I was most likely past the danger, or at least I assumed I was, I boldly popped my head out of the cart and looked around, the sunlight burning my unadjusted eyes. I was alone. I don't mean that I was alone in the cart, though I was, but rather that there was absolutely nobody around. Not a single parent was there to greet anyone coming off the ride. The cart was still moving when I rolled myself over to the side and landed on the ground hard. I was frantic at this point, nearly crying as I moved as fast as I could through the grounds, making a beeline away from the timber tunnel and towards the long building at the front of the park. Okay. This is just fucking ridiculous. But everything up until this point has been realistic. Even you can kind of make an excuse as to why they would be showing graphic imagery to children. Okay, so like, different times. Not exactly, but you can even see an argument there. This is ridiculous. But it's been grounded with so much just like stuff that's personally relatable. Like, so much stuff that, you know, people have gone through, and have memories of, and might not even necessarily remember, and reading this might make them remember these kinds of small details of times when they really felt powerless, or times when they really felt excited to go to an amusement park, or times that they were upset on a long car ride. Stuff like that. Long buildings from the park. The petting zoo was empty except for the animals. Everything was empty. The game booths displayed unguarded prizes, and the other rides whirled and click-clacked with no passengers and no operators. That's especially eerie. As I moved through the arcade building, I made sure to stop at each row of cabinets to see if my parents had come there for some unknown reason. I was just as desolate as the rest of the place. When I reached the parking lot, that's when relief finally washed over me. There was my mom and dad, walking towards our car. Other parents were here as well, doing much the same. "Mom!" I called out. "Dad!" Nothing. Not even hesitation in their steps. "Mom!" I repeated in a desperate tone. When I caught up with them, I slipped between them and took their hands again. They both gasped in shock and looked down at me as if some sort of otherworldly creature had suddenly grabbed onto them. So, like, that's, you know, that's a disturbing idea, isn't it? Like, your parents don't even recognize you. "Hey," Mom said, almost as if she remembered something from far away in the past. "Hey, where were you?" "Mom," I said, starting to bawl at this point. "Mom, I was in the tunnel. You left me in the tunnel. Things were going on, Mom." You know, tunnel's capitalized, going is capitalized. "Where were you going, Mom?" You know, that's just, oof. "The tunnel," she repeated, seeming mystified. "The tunnel," Dad grinned at Mom. "We left him in the tunnel." He was making fun of me, acting like I wasn't making sense, and like I was doing it on purpose. It made me so mad that I could actually hear my own pulse. "Dad, you did!" All caps. Oh, I love that. I never convinced them. To this day, I never convinced them of any of it. Even though we all got into the car and drove up that slope out of Whimsywood, 10 seconds later, they acted like they had never heard of the place. They acted as if there had been no interruption in the trip. Mom even said I dreamed it. Agency. This kid isn't even being believed by his parents. And, you know, the idea of a kid saying something ridiculous and not being believed by his parents, that's, you know, that's whatever. That kind of stuff happens. You know, kids will make up tall tales, that kind of thing. But here, we've been told everything that's happened up until this point, and it furthers his story. You know what I mean? All of these details. He's dreamt up all of these details. That's why I love this story. We were right in the middle of talking about Whimsywood. She had just said it seemed like a nice place, even if it was a bit run down. And the next moment, she was talking about it being something I dreamt. I watched another car behind us that had just come from the park as well, without the child that had been riding along less than an hour earlier. Out of the passenger side window came a stuffed rabbit, a juice cup, a coloring book. By the time we reached Arizona, a combination of my parents' insistence that I dreamt it all, combined with the monotony of the remaining trip, had me worn down. All of his agency being stripped away just wore him down to where he just kind of submitted. I really started to consider the idea hadn't been real. I almost had myself fooled until the trip home. On the way back, we passed the billboards again. Games, rides, animals, family fun, 25 miles ahead. Hey, Mom. Hey, look, Mom said. You've been really good. Do you want to stop there on the way? Much to her surprise, I declined. Wow. I love that. It's a really gut punch of a story, you know? Especially the idea that he recognized the parents and that their accompanying child was missing in the car when they passed it. I just absolutely love that. I know that this has been a long, rambly video about a story that my friend wrote, and me just complimenting it the whole time. But you can find this story at Slimebeast.com. If you Google Slimebeast and Whimsywood, or preferably use Bing. Along with that, Slimebeast, myself, and Abysmii do a show called FEARFIC. It's a podcast where we do much the same thing that I'm doing here. We all three read stories together and critique them, react to them, and whatnot. Please go check that out. You can also check out my video where I explain what Ashcan horror is, this is a very Ashcan story, where I explain the concept behind it in a minute. Thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed this.